Have you ever had a story turn on you in a way that changes everything? Maybe it's a movie that left you breathless because the ending made you reimagine all that came before it. Knives Out and Barbarian did this for audiences in recent years. For 2 hours, we thought we were watching one kind of story, only to realize in the final moments we had missed something crucial all along. Or maybe it's a jokey story like this one. This guy dies and arrives at the pearly gates, and St. Peter looks him up in the book and says, I don't see very many good deeds here. Can you tell me something remarkable that you did? The man thinks and he says, well, once I saw a group of bikers harassing a woman. So I walked right up to the biggest, meanest one, punched him in the face, and told them all to leave alone. St. Peter raises an eyebrow. Wow, that's pretty impressive. When did this happen? The man sort of shuffles his feet. Oh, about 30 seconds ago. Unexpected twists certainly arrest our attention. Maybe that's why they call them punch lines. Jesus, too, has a way of doing this to us in his teaching. He lulls us into the beauty of the moment, paints a picture of divine peace and provision, and then, just when we've relaxed in a don't worry, be happy kind of portrait of calm, he pulls the rug out from under us. This text from Matthew 6 is one of those moments. Jesus spends all these verses sketching a story about a life of trust, a world where worry has no place. Do not be anxious for your life, he says. God provides for the birds and the lilies, and God will provide for you too. Seek first the kingdom of God, and everything else will be taken care of. It's an incredible promise, isn't it? A passage so well loved it's been inscribed on coffee mugs and refrigerator magnets. But then comes the twist. You may have even missed it because it's the very last phrase of the very last line. This unexpected punchline that catches us off guard and changes how we hear everything before it. Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring worries of its own. Today's trouble, it's enough for today. Wait, what? Jesus, after all this talk about trust and divine care, lands with this blunt acknowledgement that life is pretty darn hard. Today has enough trouble of its own. It's not the ending we expected. We thought Jesus was leading us toward a promise that faith would make life smooth, that trust in God would mean ease and comfort. Instead, he drops into one of those both-and tensions that grown-ups have to deal with when they're being fierce with reality, and he affirms both of these things. God is trustworthy, and life is full of trouble. Now, we don't always know how to hold these things together. We struggle to believe that life can be good and difficult at the same time, that faith can be real even in seasons of fear, and that trust in God doesn't erase the realities of a world that is, in fact, full of trouble. Shall we take a breath right there, right now? This life full of trouble, are we feeling it? Amen. Let's hold a space for that for just a moment and send God into it. But Jesus, in his infinite wisdom, refuses to let us live in illusion. Instead, he calls us to a faith that is sustainable, not because it avoids difficulty, but because it regenerates even in the midst of difficulty. Now, unfortunately, we get exposed to a lot to the myth of a perfect, worry-free life. We're trained to believe, I think, that trust in God should come with a promise of ease. If I just believe enough, if I just pray the right way, if I just get my spiritual life in order, then life will work its way out. And then the path will be smooth, and then I won't have to worry. But Jesus knows better. He is, in fact, a marvelous realist. He never promises that following him will erase hardship. Instead, he calls us to a life that acknowledges reality and still finds hope. The earth, Mother Nature, if you will, with its resilience and its ability to recover and heal, offers some powerful testimony of this same kind of balance between reality and hope. The soil, exhausted by harvest, is restored when left to rest. The forests don't avoid the storm, but they learn how to regrow, their roots reaching deeper, their canopies stretching to the light. The rivers don't resist change. They carve new paths, flowing with persistence and grace. The prairie, burned by fire, comes back even greener, its roots strengthened by the flames. And the ocean's tides, they retreat only to return again with power, reminding us that loss is never the final word. Creation itself teaches us that life is not about avoiding hardship, but leaning in and learning to thrive within it. Healing is literally written into the fabric of the world that God has made. And just as nature finds ways to renew itself, so too does the human soul when it is rooted in faith. So a sustainable faith takes cues from creation. For are we not a part of that same creation, learning to thrive within hardship? A sustainable faith does not mean that we will never feel anxious or afraid. It does not mean we will never struggle. It does mean that we learn to root ourselves in something deeper than our circumstances. Like the trees that stretch their roots down into the unseen reservoirs of nourishment that are there. Like the river that keeps moving forward, carving new paths when obstacles appear. Like the soil that after being broken open nurtures new life. Are you with me? A sustainable faith is a faith that regenerates. It's not diminished by hardship, but deepened. It's not exhausted by struggle, but transformed. It's a faith that, like the earth itself, is always finding new ways to renew, to restore, and to rise again. Jesus is inviting us into that kind of faith, a faith that does not burn out, but renews itself, a faith that trusts God's presence even when the road ahead is unclear, a faith that does not deny trouble, but refuses to be undone by it. So, how do we live this kind of sustainable, renewable, rechargeable faith? How do we see the kingdom of God right in the middle of the mess, in a world that's urgent and anxious and constantly demanding more? How do we keep from worry in the middle of sleepless nights and overdue bills, strained relationships and uncertain futures, long work days and overwhelming news cycles? How do we trust in God when life is chaotic as a cluttered kitchen or unpredictable as a storm rolling in, as relentless as an inbox that never empties? How do we hold on to a faith when the mess isn't just out there in the world, but right here in our homes and in our hearts? Well, I think here's where the sustainability where sustainability becomes more than a metaphor. It's an actual spiritual practice that regenerates. So first, we learn to trust the grace of today, not the illusion of control. Jesus tells us, do not worry about tomorrow. Today has enough trouble of its own. Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, don't worry because tomorrow will be easy. He doesn't say, if you trust enough, nothing bad will happen. He simply says, trust today. You see, faith isn't about controlling the future. It's about trusting that God is already there. Just as a garden doesn't grow overnight but must be tended daily, faith is a practice of daily renewal. Trusting the grace available today begins with small, intentional steps, learning to release the need for absolute certainty and control. Open your hands up. Let your shoulders roll down, because I know I'm sitting here clenched a little bit, right? Release the need for absolute certainty and choosing instead to rest in what is sufficient for this moment. It means cultivating awareness, pausing in prayer, breathing deeply in God's presence, practicing gratitude for what is right here, right now. Just feel the energy of these beautiful humans all around you. That's something to be grateful for, eh? Like the morning dew that nourishes plants before the sun rises, God's grace is present in small and daily ways, if only we take the time to notice. And trust, it grows over time through practice, by remembering past moments of provision, by leaning into God's faithfulness in the quiet and the ordinary, and by choosing, even in uncertainty, to believe that God's mercy will meet us again tomorrow. And on those days when trust feels impossible, we borrow it from the prayers of the saints, from the hand of a friend, from the faith of the church. Even Jesus in the garden leaned on the presence of those closest to him. We don't need to have all the answers today. We don't need to solve everything at once. We just need to be present, to trust the grace that is available today, and to let trust itself take root and deepen. So that's the second thing. We root ourselves in practices that renew. The earth has rhythms that sustain life, seasons, cycles, renewal. Faith has them too. We're not meant to live at full speed all the time, and Jesus took time to withdraw. Why shouldn't we? The practice of prayer and silence, Sabbath and gratitude, these are not luxuries. These are how our souls breathe. To root ourselves in the well of God's grace, we must return to that grace again and again and again. Just as the trees send their roots deep into the underground streams, we must cultivate those practices that keep us connected to God's living water. This could mean setting aside sacred time each day, stepping away from the rush of productivity to listen and rest. It might mean finding stillness in nature, journaling, or simply whispering a quiet prayer. God, be near. Lord, have mercy. Spirit, show me the way. Renewal comes not in a single moment, but in steady, ongoing rhythms of returning to the source. Beloved, if you don't know that God's grace is never exhausted, if you can't know that, at least know that I know that God's grace is never exhausted, and hold on to mine. Number 3, we do this by remembering that we are sustained in community. Because sustainability is never an individual act, not in the environment and not in our faith. We can only be sustained in connection to community. We need each other. We sustain each other. And a sustainable church, a church life, means more than just attending worship. It means building a faith community where people are nourished with trust and support. Like a forest where the trees share nutrients through underground networks, we are meant to thrive together, offering encouragement, practical help, and the presence of each other in times of struggle. And just like the diversity of an ecosystem, so too does the church rely on the diversity of gifts within the body. Some provide wisdom, others compassion, some envision, others implement, some lead, others serve quietly in the kitchen. Each gift matters, each presence contributes to the whole. A sustainable faith grows when we bear one another's burdens, when we show up for each other in small, faithful ways, whether through a meal or a listening ear, a witnessed prayer, or a witnessed pain point. In a world that isolates, the church is called to be a web of resilience, reminding us that we are never alone. And when one of us is running on empty, another steps in with encouragement. The church exists for this very reason, to be a people who sustain one another and remind each other that even in the hardest of times, we are not alone. Yeah? So, your invitation. This journey is not about choosing between certainty and doubt, or strength and weakness, or hope and grief. It's about holding both and. Jesus knows how lifey life can be and how paradoxical reality is. And Jesus invites us to practice a sustainable faith in it anyway. Because faith doesn't remove the struggles of life. Rather, it sustains us through them. So Jesus surprises us with this unexpected twist because he knows that a sustainable spiritual life is a life that lives in the both and. It's a life in which paradoxical things can be equally true. Paradoxical things like you are resilient and you need a break. You gave your all and now you need to back out. You are independent and you still need others. You were sure and then things changed. You are kind and you have boundaries. Others have it worse and your pain is still valid. You did your best, and now you know more. This is the truth of a sustainable faith. We do not have to live in either or thinking, but can hold the complexity of both and. We can trust and doubt. We can hope and grieve. We can stand strong and still need help. We do not have to wait for life to be perfect before we trust God. We do not have to wait until we have everything figured out, until our anxiety is gone, until our worries are silenced. We can trust God today exactly as we are in the middle of whatever this day holds. Because hope is not found in the absence of hardship. It's found in the presence of God who walks through it with us. A sustainable life is like the earth, rooted, renewing, and always growing. So, let's risk it. Let's practice what we've just proposed. Step into the trust that today's grace is enough. Root yourself in spiritual practice and this faith community that will renew your energy and hold your hope. Let someone hold faith for you if you can't hold it for yourself. And lean into the sacred tension of both and living, and discover that in that very space, in this very space, between it all, God is already there. That, dear friends, is good news indeed. May it be so for you.